Welcome to the battlefield of brains, where strategy meets chaos and every move burns with intensity. Watch grandmasters clash, pieces fall, and legends rise. Almasi plays e4, pushing central pawn boldly like a spear, claiming space and inviting an immediate tactical confrontation from Wesley. Wesley replies e6, adopting French defense posture, bracing dark squares and preparing a disciplined, counter-attacking structure without panic. Almasi advances d4, cementing central control and flexing pawns like heavy infantry, occupying the battlefield's most important terrain. Wesley meets with d5, striking back in the center and declaring open conflict, challenging Almasi's ambitious territorial ambitions directly. Almasi develops nc3, reinforcing the center and eyeing d5. A knight planted like a vigilant scout, ready to pounce. Wesley pins with bb4, threatening the knight and stirring structural tension, testing white's composure with a precise tactical probe. Almasi thrusts f5, advancing boldly to cramp black's position and transform the center into a boiling cauldron of possibilities. Wesley counters c5, attacking the pawn chain, initiating pawn combat and opening lines for his pieces to charge through. Almasi plays a3, chasing the bishop away with righteous impatience, undermining black's pin and forcing a concrete resolution. Wesley answers bxc, freaking railway, capturing the knight and inflicting doubled pawns, trading structure for dynamic imbalance with surgical calm. Almasi recaptures bxc3, accepting pawn weaknesses but opening the b-file and keeping long-range pressure alive like a stubborn survivor. Wesley develops n7, to makes s7, rerouting the knight to useful squares and preparing flexible defense while hiding deeper tactical intentions. Almasi unleashes qg4, pointing the queen at g7 with predatory intent, smelling kingside weaknesses and tactical shot opportunities. Wesley plays qc7, defending critical squares and coordinating queen with rook potential. A quiet move building solid counterplay. Almasi grabs qe7, co7, snatching the g7 pawn and threatening devastation. His queen now a marauder deep in enemy lines. Wesley responds r8, attacking the intruding queen and forcing her choices, launching a tempo hunt to punish the daring raid. Almasi brazenly plays qxs7, capturing again and increasing material lead, while risking queen exposure like a gambler chasing glory. Wesley strikes cx4, opening the center dramatically and transforming structure to unleash piece activity and immediate tactical fights. Almasi retreats n2, repositioning the knight to untangle forces and prepare rescue operations for his embattled queen and king. Wesley develops nbc6, mobilizing queenside knight into central action and adding pressure to white's newly loosened formation. Almasi pushes forward, expanding kingside pawns aggressively, aiming to build a storm and suffocate black's cramped position by force. Wesley answers dxc3, capturing into c3 and creating a passed pawn. Trading structure for dynamic initiative and tactical threats. Almasi centralizes qd3, regrouping the queen to coordinate defenses and target potential weaknesses, while steadying white's wounded army. Wesley advances d4, thrusting a pawn into white's space, zeitzing dynamic central control and cramping white's potential counterplay. Almasi hops on 3, rerouting his knight toward the kingside attack like a venomous predator circling for a lethal strike. Wesley develops b7, strengthening coordination and preparing to bring rooks into play, shoring up defenses against white's active pieces. Almasi plays b2, finishing development calmly and preparing to castle, aligning pieces for concentrated middle game pressure against Wesley. Wesley castles, throwing his king to the queenside fortress and signaling a sharp opposite side pawn storm battle ahead, d2. Almasi castles, tucking his king safely and connecting rooks, preparing to meet Wesley's wings of aggression eye to eye. Wesley jumps, n5, leaping into aggressive squares and threatening tactical intrusions. A knight itching to wreak havoc near white's king. Almasi replies n4, centralizing with authority and contesting key squares, provoking exchanges that could open lethal lines for either side. Wesley reroutes n7, reorganizing pieces for defense and counterattack, while keeping options open for explosive breakthroughs later. Almasi plunges nf6, an audacious infiltration into black's camp, eyeing forks and disruptions like a commando behind enemy lines. Wesley swings, or g6, activating the rook aggressively as a tactical hammer, preparing to harass white's queen and kingside structure. Almasi sacrifices in st7, capturing on 7 to rip open defenses, trading material for disarray in black's coordination and structure. Wesley recaptures n7, and n7, restoring material equality and placing a rook on an active, centralized square ready to dominate files. Almasi places bf3, aiming bishop at vulnerable diagonals and coordinating with queen for potential kingside pressure or future sacrifices. Wesley centralizes nd5, dominating key squares and threatening tactical strikes. A knight planted like a dangerous thorn in white's camp. Almasi activates Arabon, shifting rook to the b-file to mobilize queenside pressure and support advancing pawns like siege engines. Wesley tucks bait, moving his king to safety behind pawns and avoiding immediate tactics while maintaining offensive readiness. Almasi stages before, strengthening diagonal control and threatening to slice through black's position. Aligning pieces for an impending clash. Wesley repositions r8, bringing the rook back to g-file defense and potential counterattack. Balancing defense with latent g-file power. Almasi pushes a4, initiating a pawn storm on the queenside, aiming to pry open black's long-castled position with relentless pressure. Wesley replies, "Ke senie, and no robun, and tenasik." Centralizing queen and eyeing afar while coordinating defense and possible counter-threats across the board center. Almasi advances a5, charging further with the pawn storm, and threatening to create open files against Wesley's sheltering king. Wesley skirmishes Kafur, Ischimo Neymarin, and Bispedia, Ilewernishtao, Ospejipay. Thrusting queen into white's territory to probe weaknesses and create counterplay on the expanding queenside battlefield. Almasi pushes a6, driving pawns deeper to destabilize black's queenside structure and pry open lines for heavy pieces to enter. Wesley defends b6, shoring up queenside with a pawn shield, blocking white's passer and strengthening his king's immediate shelter. Almasi lifts rb3, preparing rook maneuvers along the third rank and seeking infiltration, points to crack open black's setup. Wesley plunges, d3, a knight leap deep into enemy territory, like a saboteur cutting the opponent's defensive webs. Almasi repositions ra3, doubling rook threats and applying psychological pressure. Marching Ziege engines closer to the trembling fortress. Wesley replies qb4, slicing across queenside squares and threatening penetration, while probing for an exploitable tactical mismatch. Almasi returns rb3, repeating maneuvers to keep tension and search for a breakthrough, refusing to yield tempo or hope. Wesley repeats q4, showing iron patience and waiting for white to overcommit or allow a decisive inroad. Almasi shifts ra3, persistent and stubborn, refusing to concede initiative while honing the timing for a critical assault. Wesley repeats qb4, maintaining the probing pressure like a predator circling wounded prey, ready to strike at a misstep. Almasi plays rb3 again, clinging to repeating threats and searching for a crack in Wesley's chillingly steady armor. Wesley changes course q7, altering queen angle to balance defense and prepare new tactical resources for the coming fight. Almasi sacrifices bx3, removing a dangerous knight and opening lines at heavy cost. Embracing chaos for potential decisive compensation. Iyong keyword. Wesley captures dxa3, creating a deadly passed pawn and transforming the center into a ticking weapon aimed at white's position. Almasi replies qx3, grabbing a pawn and activating the queen's battery, hunting counterplay while the center simmers dangerously. Wesley pushes etfu, advancing the passed pawn into white's territory like a slow-burning fuse toward queening possibilities. Almasi plays rione, blocking that pawn's path and erecting a last-resort barrier with calculated, desperate defensive resolve. Wesley invades Sardon, placing a rook deep in enemy lines and threatening decisive penetration like special forces behind enemy gates. Almasi sacrifices bsfcf5, eliminating a key defender and hoping to disrupt Wesley's coordination. Trading material for tactical instability. Wesley develops a sate, Zeitzing the open c-file and coordinating heavy pieces to punish white's weakened structure and expose king. Almasi moves qg3, repositioning queen to conjure counterplay and watch over fragile squares while seeking tactical shots at black's king. Wesley fires QC5e, checking the king and forcing reactions, slicing through white's defenses while building decisive pressure. Almasi retreats corner, tucking king into a corner bunker and trying to survive the oncoming storm with stubborn resolve. Wesley captures x5, reinforcing central control, gaining material advantage, and turning past pawn dynamics into concrete attacking resources. Almasi plays a pawn, rerouting his rook to resist incoming threats and keep a fragile defensive network barely intact. Wesley centralizes QD5, planting his queen dominantly in the center, dictating tempo and preparing the final encirclement. Almasi puffs H3, creating luft for the king and carving a tiny breathing space amidst the pressure. A small survival act. Wesley reinforces H8, stacking rooks onto critical files like twin cannons, preparing synchronized bombardment of white's last lines. Almasi slides KH2, shifting king sideways to dodge tactics while clinging to fading coordination like a wounded commander. Wesley advances K4, placing the queen like an executioner above white's position, threatening lethal discoveries and final blows. Almasi answers QHH4, offering counter-threats and trying to complicate matters, swinging a last desperate blade at Wesley's defenses. Wesley doubles H7, building an iron rook battery to crush resistance and prepare the decisive breakthrough without mercy. Almasi repositions RB3, attempting to protect and counterattack while clinging to material and hope like a stubborn defender. Wesley slashes Araxione, removing a crucial defender and ripping open white's shelter, turning tension into concrete material advantage. Almasi fires Kuhait, delivering a desperate check and seeking miracle tactics to conjure life from a near-hopeless battlefield. Wesley calmly plays K7, stepping his king forward into relative safety while turning his monarch into an active fighting piece. Almasi checks RC3T, throwing another tactical grenade to fracture black's coordination and force immediate and precise responses. Wesley blocks K6, using queen interposition to parry threats and maintain control, absorbing Almasi's flares with stoic resolve. Almasi sacrifices detonating material to crack open black's lines and create chaos around Wesley's centralized king. Wesley recaptures Kiex, transforming his king into a dominant force that swallows squares and eliminates white's lingering hopes. Almasi checks Q8, launching a final desperate salvo to unnerve the defending king and search for tactical salvation. Wesley answers RC7, calmly interposing rook to blunt the check and maintain his material plus while consolidating position. Almasi strikes Ko8, chasing the king and forcing further marches, squeezing every last drop of mischief from his queen. Wesley marches KC5, his king now an aggressive behemoth, striding into the open to shatter white's remaining resistance. Almasi plays clickbait, seeking perpetual dreams and tactical threads, while desperately clinging to possibilities in an increasingly bleak situation. Wesley redeploys Archik 6. Reinforcing his blockade and sealing escape routes, methodically reducing Almasi's compensatory chances without drama. Almasi captures Q7, snatching a pawn as a small consolation prize, while continuing to probe for any lingering counterchances. Wesley invades a dawn, a rook, piercing White's defenses like a blade through cloth, threatening decisive infiltration and immediate material gain. Almasi checks Q7, swinging a last flashing check in hope of confusion or miraculous reversal before the end. Wesley calmly responds Kba5, stepping the king to a safe yet dominant square, and the battle collapses into resignation. Victory sealed. Endgame, I end the video here. Please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll keep finding the best and newest videos to share with you. Thank you so much. And I wish you all happiness and good health.